Very much for coming along tonight for this evening's event at the Foreign Correspondents Club. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Jonathan Head. I'm on the board of the FCCT and I'm also the BBC Southeast Asia correspondent. And I've been a correspondent in this region off and on for the past 21 years. And so the issues that we'll be hearing about tonight are very familiar to me, as they are to every other journalist who's covered it. Displacement of people and refugees are a fact of life all over the world. But in Southeast Asia, which in much of it has been at peace for the last 20, 30 years, you still have serious areas of conflicts along borders. And the issue of displaced people is one that very rarely attracts attention these days, but is a serious human problem. It's a huge problem about sustaining people, about trying to find some kind of future for them, about trying to give them the best quality life you can in very uncertain circumstances. And we'll be hearing tonight in particular about the situation in Myanmar and along the border with Thailand, where there were so many hopes raised when the reform started about 5 years ago, but where we're seeing today many of those conflicts not just unresolved, but in some cases intensifying with the inevitable result that we're seeing more people displaced and very little option for those who've been displaced to come back home. Just before we get going, I might just give you some notice of some events we've got coming up over the next couple of weeks. Next week, on the 7th, we have a program looking at the issue of indigenous people here in Thailand. Not something people think about very often, but we have under this government, and it's not the only government, constant problems of land rights, of what's known as national park land, and indigenous communities who've used it and are now, because this government's trying to crack down on what it considers illegality, serious clashes of how land is used and how people who might have lived on it for a very long time might be allowed to continue using it. So it's a very worthwhile program because it's an issue that's actually rather important for Thailand, and it's not one we've covered for quite a while. On the 14th of December, we have one of the most renowned photographers based here in Thailand, and we do like to use the club to showcase talent, those of us who have it. Paula Bronstein is one of the world's most famous photographers now, and she's been doing quite exceptional work in Afghanistan for the last 2 decades. Astonishing stuff. She was Getty Agency's chief photographer for many years. She now works as a freelance, but still goes back time and again, and in particular she's always focused. I mean, she's a woman working on her own, which is a tough call in a place like Afghanistan. She's not a very big woman either, although any of you who know her will know she's really tough. But she's focused in particular on women in Afghanistan, and she's just published a book that's highly acclaimed, a stunning book of photographs about her experiences of getting to know women in Afghanistan. And she'll be bringing copies of the book, of a documentary that's about her work, and we'll be speaking about the work she's done in Afghanistan and elsewhere, but particularly that. So that's really worth coming to. She's a real character and not to be missed. She travels so much, even though she lives in Bangkok, we don't get to see her that often. We also have the FCCT's quiz night on the 15th of December. Any of you want to pitch your wits against the media's finest here, do come along. It's a huge amount of fun, and the questions are so damn tough, we all get a lot of them wrong. On the 16th, we will be having our annual seasonal bash here at the club. We're still working out exactly what the format of that's going to be, but it should be a great deal of fun, so put that aside if you can. Let's get on to tonight's panel. If I could ask the panelists to come up and take their seats so everybody knows you're there. We're having this panel based or using the photographs that you'll see on the wall there as an attempt to give people a fresh look at the IDP experience. And this is an unusual project, which I will get Kayla to talk about in a minute, where she's given children living in IDP camps disposable cameras so that they can go around and document what they think are the important moments of their lives. You know, Thailand still has a huge number of displaced people living in camps along its borders who've been there for 2 decades. It's almost a forgotten issue now. We've got Sally Thompson from the Border Consortium that has been helping to look after the people in these camps. At various times, the numbers have run between 100 to 140,000. The Thai authorities keep the big agencies out, and it's a big job to keep people there sustained. There had been a great hope that they would be able to go back to Myanmar after the reforms inevitably that's been proving a lot harder. People have to adjust as well after all those years living in these camps. And we've got some other very distinguished speakers to talk about the situation of IDPs in Myanmar. David Balk works for Fortify Rights, one of the most active human rights agencies in this region in Yangon, and has been working in particular on the situation in Rakhine State and up in Kachin State, where we have active conflicts. And we're very privileged to have Konja over in the far left there, who's working for the Kachin Peace Network and is a long-standing and very well-known activist, been going in and out of Kachin State, bringing out information and from the areas which are sort of cut off, where you've got front lines between the Kachin Independence Army and the Myanmar authorities, and continuing a massive problems of displacement. And we've also got Mr. Kin Mong Myint, who's just told me he's an engineer, but he's also stood for Parliament in 2010 as a Rohingya in Sitwe, his home city, and will be telling us about the situation of the Rohingya there. Of course, huge numbers of the Muslim population in Sitwe were driven out in the violence that erupted in 2012 and have been living in pretty awful camps outside the town ever since then, with their movements tightly restricted. It's a kind of forced division. I went with a British minister there 3 years ago who wasn't actually that sympathetic at first, but when he looked at the situation there, he was quite shocked. He said it felt like apartheid in South Africa, seeing the way the communities were forcibly separated and how one community, the Rohingya, were marginalized and treated really as second-class citizens. So it'll be good to hear from him about the situation of people there, and of course the active violence that we've been hearing about up in northern Rakhine State along the border with Bangladesh, where there have been some pretty horrific reports of attacks by the Burmese military. Kayla, could I just ask you to talk a little bit, first of all, about the photo project and the documentary before we will play a short film describing this project?
Thank you. Can you? Yeah, okay. So thank you for David and, Jonathan and the FCCT for giving me the space to present these photographs to you and show you the documentary that you're about to see. So Through the Eyes of an IDP is the story of people who have been displaced and are living within the invisible walls of IDP camps within Burma. And people often ask me, like, why did I start this project, or like, why did I choose Burma? And it started in 2012 while I was there doing some family research. And I didn't know anything about the country, nothing about the political situation. And so as I arrived, I was very shocked with the things that I was learning about the situation there. And so it kind of like grasped my attention. And over the next few years, I spent every free time that I had in the country, traveling around different states, speaking to different local people, and understanding the situation as it is today. Except from when I returned home and tried to continue my research, whether it be online, through newspapers, articles, I was finding that the stories were mainly from a journalist's point of view rather than the people who really needed to speak about it, the local people. And so, being the fact that my background is in photography, I decided to create a platform that could provide the local people with something, how they could share their story in a powerful and meaningful way that would show you their life as close to possible as their reality through their photographs. And so I chose to work with the children in the camps because they're the next generation. And if things don't change in Burma soon, what these children have photographed will still be what the next generation is seeing and what they're still going to have to live through. And so I decided to give the children a camera and ask them to photograph their everyday life, giving them the freedom to either get lost in a moment, capture something they'd want to share with you, or show us the slight glimpse of the struggles that they face every single day while they live in these camps. And so the project started traveling to the Rakhine State, working with the Rohingya minority. And as I'm sure you all know, they're all discriminated against because mainly of their religion, and therefore stripped of their citizenship. And so these camps were by far the worst of all the conditions of the camps that I'd seen. be it from lack of food, lack of clean water, lack of being able to work, and therefore resulting in, lack of dignity in general in living in these camps. So second of all, it went to the Karen state on the Thai-Burma border, and this particular camp is kind of trapped in a valley between the river on one side that borders Thailand and the Burmese military on the other side. And so with that location that they're in, they have a lack of land to grow crops, lack of roads to be able to travel and have freedom within their own country, considering, they've been displaced, but this is still their country and they still have a lack of freedom to be able to travel these places. And the third area I went to was the Kachin state in northern Burma. Now this camp was on the outskirts of a city, so I thought perhaps they would have a better situation, more support from the community, but in actual fact it wasn't the case. There isn't enough work there for the people who live in the city, never mind the people in the camp as well. And so again, with the lack of work becomes, turns into disappointment, not being able to provide for your family, resulting in just a life kind of waiting for something to change. So this project has been nearly a 3-year struggle, I would say, trying to find funding to make it possible, writing countless grant reports to get some funding to continue it. And so eventually I funded it through a Kickstarter where people would donate money in return for photographs that the children have produced. And so as you can see on the wall today, this is just a selection of the best photographs. There's only 15. There is hundreds of pictures that I could choose from that are all as spectacular as these ones. And I think the children did a really good job of capturing the innocence that a child still has, yet the difficulty that they live in has provided them with the life that they have to mature way earlier than they should be doing due to the conflict they're having to face every day. And so then there's also a short documentary that we'll play in a second that is just some video footage that I have taken throughout the project and kind of put together to show a few of the children's stories in more depth. And so hopefully what I tried to do is bring light to the children and also draw your attention in to understand the current situation that they're living in. So just quickly, the future of the project, I would hope, was to turn the project into a book that would have all of the children's information, all of their stories, all of my stories that accompany the children, because there's so many countless stories that represent how these children are having to live today. And so if anyone has any contacts of funding, then I would very much appreciate that if you could speak to me at the end. Otherwise, share, make the situation known. That is mainly what these people need to raise awareness of their situation. The photos are also for sale. If anyone would like to understand anything about each photo, I have a very detailed story about each photograph. If anyone's interested in them, just come and speak to me at the end. My personal favorite, I think, is the first photograph of a mother breastfeeding her child. And her other daughter, who is only 9 years old, captured this photograph. And it just shows how a moment so natural has been able to be captured in such a pure, innocent way by a 9-year-old. And so if you get a chance to have a look at them later, then you should. And just lastly, I'd like to leave you with a thought of, often the media identifies people living in these situations with facts and figures. Where are they coming from? Why are they coming from there? How many of them are there? When in reality, they're just people like you and me who have a really strong story to tell. And so I hope through this documentary, I'm able to voice their stories to you in a way and hope that you can see their stories through their own eyes. Thank you.
this case, the only thing I remember from my life, I live here with my other father, brothers, and sisters. I don't go to school because my parents can't afford the tuition. And so my school here is to help my mother and father. I took photographs of my life here. This is the view from my home, where I have lived for 10 years. This is my brother, brothers and friends. None of us can afford to go to school, so we spend the day here. Sometimes I go down to the river next to our camp. We are praying, they are having a river separates us. This is my favorite photograph because it shows my grandparents and I brought up different people and to be great. One day I would like to be famous.
My name is Nova Ubu. I am from the Kachin. I have been living in this camp for 6 years. Through my photo, I want to show the difficulties of life and the hardships of living in an IDP camp. This video is old. She is around 18 years and a widow. I want to show that at this age, you do be eating healthy food and getting some nutrients, but she can only eat rice because she has no money to buy food. This is my favorite photograph because it shows the hardship that she lived through here in the camp. This old grandma is taking care of her grandchild, but she is too old to even take care of herself. You can see she can't even move her clothes to cover her legs for me to take a photo. This year, I graduated from grade 10. After that, I will continue studying, and when I finish in the future, I will stand by poor people and help them. My name is Rohingya. I'm 18 years old. I'm originally from Burma township, but I've been living in this camp in the current state for 8 years in a conflict setup in my area. Living in a camp is hard if you don't have family to take care of you. Life is very difficult. This woman has many children, but none of them are here to take care of them. And so I took this photo to show the difficulty that the woman lives with. When I graduated from Rachel, I continued to achieve higher education. When I finished my trip, I will help my community with collecting information and reporting it to the media. This is a teacher song you are at our school. It stands on the landmark when he was there. He explained teacher at the camp for many years now. Even though life is difficult here, we can always attend school if our family can afford it.
My name is Louis Cook. I am just living for an income the order of unattended. My parents can afford for me to go to school, and therefore I can read and write. I have tried to tell the story of my life here in the camp through the photos. This is my man feeding the little sister in my crib. Here the children are playing in a home that is supposed to be full of water for us to use. As you can see, all there is in the hole is a little bit of dirty water. This is my club, which we can one of the other kids are in school. He is sitting in a vegetable patch, very full of vegetables.
My name is Zulma, and I am 15 years old. I have been living in this IDP camp for 4 years since we have to flee our village due to conflict against our people, the Rohingya. This is where we live. We have no money to repair our houses. Handwritten, we have very little rights to eat and not much money to buy. These things is nothing to eat or drink, it's fine. Often people are sick in our camp, but we have no money to go to the hospital, and on the rare occasion that we do, there are always some hospitals that we are allowed to go to. Because we are Muslim and the Imam people who are Buddhist, we not allow us into their hospitals, even if we have them there. We have been living in this broken IDP since 2012, when a humanitarian and academic training was undertaken by the Burmese government and government against the Rohingya Muslims in the United States.
My name is Momona. I am 18 years old. I have been living in this camp for 4 years. In my camp, it's difficult to work and find money. Many people are sick and we have no money for medicine. This father has no money for his daughter to come home. We have no places to go because the soldiers have burnt our villages and forced us to live in this camp where we have no work and no money. These babies have no clothes and play in the daytime sun. Members of thousands of young people were forced to live and villages and live in these camps where we do not have freedom of movement and have been stripped of many other of our basic human rights.
My name is Kachin. I'm 12 years old and I have lived in an IDP camp in the Arakan state for 4 years. This is my photo of two men going to work with their broken equipment. Often men are taken by the soldiers to work and never get paid. We have no school in our camps and so our family and friends teach us what they can whenever they can. A man takes a shower as the sun goes down from the wind of the communal water tap. Kids play in the water that floats across. Just beyond the horizon is the other man's sea, where boats can collect those who pay them with the hope to be taken to Malaysia for a better life.
My name is Burma. I'm 13 years old. I have been living in this camp in Kachin state for 5 years. We came to this camp because we were afraid of the fighting. The fighting was getting very serious and close to our village. I have met many people here and I have learned a lot. I also have many friends here. But I get sad when I think about my village and that I cannot go back there. When I lived in the village, we were free to go out there. But in the camp, we had to stay and plant grow fur. My mother has a shop here in the camp, and my father goes outside the camp to earn money. This is a 5-year-old child who can't walk because she suffers from poverty. His grandmother is very old, but she makes baskets so she can sell them and earn some money. We have been living in the camp over 5 years, and even though the new government has changed, the situation is getting worse.
Sometimes I look at the sun and remember someday my dad told me. He said, when you see a rainbow in the sun, it means an old person has died. I hope that they live a happy life and that they never die in pain. We live in a camp that's the only aspect of the city. We are free to leave the camp. That is not as free as our lifetime we live in our village. My name is Tusan. I am 3 years old. I have been living in this camp in Kachin state in northern Burma for 4 years since we completely started in my village. Before I left my village, we had the sound of bombs exploding and fighting. I was very young and I was so scared. From there is suddenly many children, young people and old people died. All I remember those things, I feel and happy and sad. I remember when we had a phone, we went to the teacher in my house first and then came to this camp. Now, we do not get any rights, so it's a difficult when we do not have money to buy rice and to eat. When my mother goes to work, I cook at home and carry one hour, look at the other girls here. I like to take photo of the beautiful flower. I feel so happy and clear in my house when I see them.
My name is Namsa. I'm from Kachin. I have been living in for 4 years. Before, when I lived in the village, there was fighting very close to my home. One day, the girl and her mom were looking for their missing cow. The mother told her daughter that she was going to the forest to look for the cow. Do not follow me, she said. But the daughter was left alone. The army soldiers came looking for her. The soldier raped the girl, torturing her again and again. When we arrived back to our camp, we were only girls. We were so afraid of the army soldiers that we had to find refuge. That's when me, my mom, and my sister came to the camp. I have nothing special to do in the camp. I help my parents by cooking and looking after my sister Kate. We are a poor family, and so after I finish school, I will work to help my family. Many people living in the camp have run from the fighting and ended up hiding here in the camp. And an entire family only get one room that we all have to share. To go to university, we have to support ourselves. Because my parents are supporting me through high school, and this is already difficult for them. Later, I was told myself to go to university. After I have graduated, I will major in medicine to become a doctor.
hard to follow something as powerful as that, seen through the eyes of children, but it's a reminder of just how many people are still affected by conflict in Myanmar in particular. David, could I ask you just to give us, I want everyone to just talk for about 10 minutes and keep it fairly short because we've got 4 speakers to listen to, an overview of the conflicts in Myanmar at the moment, the ones that you're following.
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. Can everyone hear me? So I want to say, first and foremost, it's great to be here for this timely and important event. I'm very grateful to be here. And it's a privilege to be on the panel with everyone as well. It's timely because 1 year since we were celebrating the election of Aung San Suu Kyi, conflict is wrecking more of Myanmar than at any point in its recent history. As the conflict has intensified, the number of displaced people has increased. Conservative estimates put the number of IDPs in Burma at 240,000, and that doesn't account for those displaced in the recent spate of fighting in northern Shan State and northern Rakhine. By any measure, the number of IDPs across Myanmar is a testament to the government's failure to deliver on its promise to bring national reconciliation after it was elected. Rather than respond by striving to meet the needs of IDPs, the government of Myanmar has refused humanitarian access to displaced populations and continued to deny that state security forces are perpetrating serious human rights violations across Myanmar. This is as true in Kachin State as it is in Rakhine. Of the estimated 100,000 people who are displaced across Kachin State, around 46,000 live in areas controlled by the Kachin Independence Army, the KIA. For more than 5 years, the government of Myanmar has restricted access to these areas for humanitarian actors, both international and local. The justification given by the government is that there is a risk of humanitarian assistance falling into the hands of the KIA and will support the revolution in Kachin land. This reasoning has forced aid organizations to undertake dangerous journeys that expend huge sums of money to deliver life-saving assistance to IDPs. In recent months, the Myanmar military have demanded IDPs travel to a safe place under government control to access supplies of food, healthcare, and other life-saving services. This means that many IDPs in KIA-controlled areas are forced to cross through conflict zones to get basic humanitarian assistance. Areas not riven by conflict are often littered with landmines. Quite literally, IDPs are forced to face death to be able to live. Despite these restrictions, some humanitarian actors are able to get assistance through, but barely. IDPs in KIA-controlled areas are provided only with rice, salt, and cooking oil. In government-controlled areas, IDPs are now facing an end to their food supplies to have them replaced with cash grants, as was alluded to in the film. The high cost of basic foodstuffs has effectively resulted in food shortages for many of the IDPs in government-controlled areas of Kachin State. And across Kachin State, funding for humanitarian actors is decreasing. 5 years into the conflict, many donors would argue that the situation in Kachin land is no longer a humanitarian emergency, but is instead in a period of early recovery, where livelihoods and durable solutions have become more important than humanitarian assistance. This means that funding is available for programs promoting livelihoods, and undoubtedly these programs are of huge importance for thousands of IDPs, but few would say that the situation in Kachin land is no longer an emergency. The eruption of conflict last weekend in northern Shan State, which has displaced, I think, around 6,000, is the latest episode in the bloody war in Myanmar's north. When and how these IDPs will receive humanitarian assistance is anyone's guess. In Rakhine State, more than 4 years since violence erupted and displaced an estimated 140,000 people, most Rohingya IDPs languish in what are best described as internment camps. This figure doesn't account for the huge numbers of Rohingya who have fled the country to escape gross and systematic human rights violations. If Rohingya attempt to leave these camps to access healthcare or education or pursue livelihoods, state security forces extort the little money they have. Inside the IDP camps, the only readily available medical treatment is paracetamol. Thousands of students don't have access to education, and the lack of livelihood opportunities often forces IDPs to sell what little food they have to make ends meet. The expected and perhaps intended outcome of these restrictions is severe, chronic poverty. Alongside these restrictions, there are thousands of IDPs who remain unregistered with the World Food Programme. This means that basic food is denied to them. Many believe the government's refusal to register them is in retaliation to their protests as their homes were looted and burned and their families and friends were attacked in 2012. These are avoidable deprivations in aid. In northern Rakhine State, attacks on policemen on October the 9th have sparked a new wave of violence against the Rohingya there. In response to the attacks, Myanmar authorities have commenced a full-on military operation marked by horrendous brutality, which is ongoing. The government has claimed that it has killed upwards of 100 armed insurgents, but there's no independent casualty recording. For the last 7 weeks, the government has blocked all access to the area. The UN, aid groups, human rights monitors, the media, and others have been denied access. Pre-existing humanitarian aid operations, including life-saving aid, were totally suspended, and humanitarian access to directly affected civilian populations is still being denied. Our latest information suggests that at least 130,000 people are being denied access to humanitarian aid in military operation areas. Among the displaced in military operation areas, there are an estimated 3,000 children suffering from severe acute malnutrition. According to the UN, these children were already suffering from malnutrition prior to the military lockdown. We don't know how many have already died. At this point, they may only have a matter of days to live. This is a highly critical time in northern Rakhine State and elsewhere. For both Rakhine and Kachin states, the government must immediately grant free and unfettered humanitarian access to all populations in need. Any failure to do this will lead directly to significant loss of life. Further, in Rakhine State, the government should invite a UN-mandated independent international commission of investigation to assess the totality of abuses there. In the absence of an invitation, an independent commission of inquiry should still proceed. Referring to displaced populations across Myanmar, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights only yesterday said that the government of Myanmar's failure to respect international humanitarian law and the rights of internally displaced people will draw a sharp response from the international community. I think 1 year since Aung San Suu Kyi's much celebrated victory, that sharp response is needed now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Konja, you go in and out of Kachin State and you find your way into the areas that are controlled by the KIA. Can you give us an update on what the situation is there?
Thank you very much. For this moment, that Kachin State was almost ready to join in national level dialogues, so-called like Union Peace Dialogue. But for this moment, we have more than 6,000 people need to flee their own land because of Northern Shan State recent attack. It is very difficult for us, even difficult to believe that this will happen again, because the civil society has already worked very hard to bring those the KIO and also ethnic civilians in the name of that national level forums for political dialogue. However, for this moment, everything seems going down and going backward for the last 6 months. Because of the clash, for this moment, we have more than 70 people in one place were arrested by the army. Not only not only fighting, not only killing, not only death in the middle of the war, but also arrest and tortured and disappearance continue to date. And within a week, starting from 20th of November, for this moment, we even don't know how many are arrested because the arrests continue. And also the torture continued. For example, last 3 days ago, then 2 men escaped from arrest, and then they were sent directly to the hospital. Their ears were chopped and then put with salt and chili. But when they arrived at the hospital, before our team my team members, they forgot to take the picture. But by that time, from the government side, they came together with the journalists, and then their pictures were taken and then putting that is as if the rebel group were done. But in reality, those kind of that was done by the army. So for this moment, the very first thing is we don't know how many disappeared. We don't really know how many people were killed, in what way, and we don't know how many people were arrested and then under the tortures. So yesterday, Mitra Development Foundation and Kachin Peace Network and Joint Strategy Team, we released one statement to release the people who were arrested from one wedding site. It was organized on the 20th. So by that time, the wedding was organized in Mongo Township, but in that village, there was no fighting yet. Why in other parts, the fighting was already started. So the people were not aware that the fighting has already started that morning, early morning. So they were gathering at the wedding. So the army came and arrested more than 70 people. That means majority of the people who were arrested were the guests from neighboring and also the relatives. And some are from China, who has Chinese citizens. So normally people in the borderline, they have relatives in both sides. So for this moment, 14 people were released. They are from China with the coordination and negotiation of Chinese authorities. However, from Myanmar side, we really don't know how many people were really arrested. So, and then up to now, they were kept at like human shield because there was still fighting. So if the army brings civilians in and keep into their post, then the rebel could not attack. So this is the way they are using for this moment. So we really do not know how many people are used in what way. The only pictures we got were the person who were escaped or dead or who arrived at the hospital. But the informations are also very difficult to gather, even for myself, who have contact and also who already trained so many people to report to us. Because the information are very diverse. So one person sent one, another person sent one, and all the informations popping up from the Ministry of Information in Myanmar is very difficult to trust. It's almost upside down from the ground. So this is happening. So we don't know how many days it will continue. It's look like going to extend. This is the situation in northern Shan State and Shan State for this moment. So in 2015 March, we finished Displaced Village Profile Report. According to that report, 367 villages were already destroyed until between 2011 to 2013. And the time of the research, then 223 villages were totally destroyed and not possible to return back. That means the villages, the housing, social infrastructure like the church, the school buildings were already gone. And also some of the villages, only a few houses left that were used by the army as their post or the camps. So this is what is happening. Now this number is increasing. But for this moment, we are in national dialogue, beginning the national dialogue. In national dialogue, land distribution is again one topic, and return and resettlement is another topic. So we got a lot of pressure for the Kachin CSOs to send those people to their own native villages. However, this will be very difficult because one, the fighting continues. Second, the land are not safe, contaminated. Third, the land are already destroyed. For example, many villages along near the streams and rivers, they were totally destroyed by transforming to be gold mining. Those gold mining are unofficial. It was facilitated between the soldiers, the army, and somehow protected by the army, and they are like mobile. But after the mining, then nothing left. Only all gravels and small stone left. No house, no trees. Even people will not recognize which one is their housing land or which one is their compound. So then very difficult to send them back. The second one is to be able to facilitate that one. We also get a lot of pressure like food cuts. For this moment in the KIO control area, outside government control area, humanitarian assistance is already stopped. And Red Cross has already stopped functioning since September. And Doctors Without Borders, they still have offices. However, they cannot bring any assistance. That means we have a lot of people living with HIV and also TB. They just live like that. So this is very difficult situation. So food is also cut in many of the government control area, so-called government control area in the camps. However, those camps are not getting any recognition under the UN system. For example, the 3 camps between Sumbrabum and Butao, it was established since 2014, but up to now there is no official aid. For this moment, 1 bag of rice is more than 100,000 kyats. It's almost $80 for this moment. Why other place has like 25,000 kyats? So it's not possible to buy rice, and also not possible to grow rice or plant paddy plantation, because this is always between frequent fighting zone. The same thing is happening in Chipui area. 1 bag of rice is more than 100,000 kyats. So it's like disaster. So when even food is cut, that also affect to education and health. So our team also raising funding from locally. But last month we distributed 20 tons of rice in Liza area, only to 2 camps. But normally that camp really needs 28 tons of rice to distribute for everyone. But we could raise only 20 tons. This month we couldn't send any drops of rice because we don't have sufficient funding to buy rice even for 10 tons yet. So this is the situation in the ground. So the pictures here that in the movie that was in just outcut in Mijina, no? So this is totally different situation compared to in Liza area for this moment. And for the students, many of the students grow up in the camp now. So some of the students already got graduated from KIO school, I mean grade 10. But those grade 10 plus students, they are not getting any recognition from the government. So they cannot continue to any school. That means they don't have any future. And so many young people without jobs. That is really creating more problem of young people's migration, human trafficking, and we have problem with single moms now. They are teenagers, they are single moms. So we even don't know how to look after those kind of issue for this moment. And back home, Myanmar is also opening for the investment. In Waimo Township is one of the most affected by war. So up to 2013, more than 100,000 acres of land were already licensed to agricultural land from as agricultural land from Naypyidaw government. That means many of the land, when we really look at, they are in the area, like in the farm, rice field, orchard of the IDPs. The IDP people are living in the camp. They even don't know their land are already licensed to business people. So we have huge problem for this moment. When they return back, even they return back where they are going to live. And taking away all the forest and land, this is totally like forcing those people not to return back. Because the Kachin people are really only upland farmers. Most of them, they do shifting cultivation and very small areas available for lowland farming in real Kachin land. So even when they return back, what they are going to eat? They don't have any place for their cattle, no place to cultivate. That means that will be huge problem. And for this moment, return and resettlement is another topic we are discussing in Union Peace Conference. So I also would like all of you to help us to stop war immediately, and also to release all civilians who are under arrest by any army. So that includes not only the government army, but also all the rebels groups. And also to reinstall humanitarian assistance immediately. Otherwise, we are killing the people and also the future. Because 10% of Kachin population are living in the camp for this moment. That means 10% of the future. And also, the rest of the Kachins are also sharing the same burden. Not only the Kachins, people who are living together with the Kachins, like Shan, Palang, all of us, and also like Wa Myangsi, in the whole area, we are sharing the same burdens. Because when the people have no food, then the host, they have to share. That means no matter whether you are IDP or not, you are residents, it really do not matter, because they are the same jobless. They cannot cultivate even if you are in your home village. So that is the problem.
Konja, can I just stop you there? We're just running a little bit short of time, if that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Kim On Mint, could you just give us an overview of the situation in your hometown, Sitwe, and of course in northern Rakhine State as well?
Sure.
Keep it brief, please.
Definitely. Thank you. First of all, I would like to appreciate the organizers who organized this event. And like my colleagues already mentioned a lot of things in detail, and I will just go on brief on the situation, current situation going on in Rakhine State and the nationwide. Like my friend David said a while ago, last year this time we were very much excited about the election after 50 years, and we selected or elected democratic government since 1962. So we are very much excited and we are very proud of that. Even myself, having by our own party, I voted for Aung San Suu Kyi because with the many expectation, And I've been NLD member and supporter of Aung San Suu Kyi since 1988. And in 2010, since NLD is not participating in the general election, we have our own party, and now I belong to a Rohingya political party called National Democratic Party for Development. We are based in Yangon, and we registered in 2010 before the general election, and we contested 22 constituency in 2010 election. I was one of the candidate from Sitwe, Rakhine State, in 2010 election. Even though I won the election and my votes were rigged by Rakhine extremists, so 2010 is already over, so I don't want to talk about it anymore. The situation in Myanmar is disastrous right now. You're all aware of that. Particularly after 2011, when Thein Sein took power as a president of the country, a few months the country was going very good and very smooth, some kind of reforms they are trying. And after that, the country, particularly after the by-election in 2012, when Aung San Suu Kyi and her party won landslide in the by-election, after that the country situation is totally changed. And you all aware of that things happened in Rakhine State in 2012, June, and systematically they destroyed the Rohingya communities, Rohingya villages, Rohingya neighborhoods, and about 150,000 people are ending up their life as an internally displaced person in the camps. And there is no reason to destroy the whole villages. There are many villages, Just imagine 150,000 are living in this place right now. So it was in 2012. Since then, situation in Rakhine State didn't improve a bit. It's getting worse and worse. And 9th of October this year, which is a couple of months ago, and there was an attack on the police post, which is pretty much unknown who are these attackers are, because nobody has access to go to over there to get the right information. Nobody is allowed to go over there. International communities are trying their best, but only military has the access over there. Not even the Aung San Suu Kyi's Ministry of Information has access to go over there. So the information ministry sharing the information provided by the military sources. So the informations are very biased. That's why Aung San Suu Kyi is taking that information as a real information, and she is denying everything what's happening in Rakhine State, particularly in northern Rakhine State. She has never been to Rakhine State except a couple of weeks before the election last year. She just visited few cities, few towns where NLD was going to run for offices. Besides that, she never been to IDPs, any single IDPs in Rakhine State. She never been to any particular IDPs in northern part of the country, like in Kachin, Karan, in Shan. She was as a chairperson of the rule of law committee when she was an MP during the Thein Sein's government. And during that 3 years, as a chairperson of the Human Rights Committee in the Parliament, she has done nothing to improve the rule of law, to improve condition of the IDPs and the situation in the conflict areas. So we are very much frustrated, total denial of Aung San Suu Kyi and incapable of her government. This is very true what's happening in Myanmar right now. We didn't vote Aung San Suu Kyi just to wait and see and fighting with everyone and whoever talking the truth, which she doesn't like. And she was angry with the UNHCR officer from Bangladesh who accused Myanmar government of ethnic cleansing Rohingya people. And she was denying and she flatly denied the accusation, and she said this officer breached the law and he went too far from his ethics. So that kind of things she is denying without knowing the real situation, because she is not getting the real information. As I said, the informations are provided by the military sources. The military sources are biased. They are just taking sided, they are just releasing the one-sided news. And the attack was happened on the morning of 10th of October, between 9th and 10th of October. It's at 2 a.m. in the morning. The very next day, police chief of Myanmar, Zaw Win, he had this statement. He released a statement. He said these attacks were from the hill tracts area from Bangladesh and Myanmar, between Bangladesh and Myanmar. It might be related to the drugs issue. Prior to that attack, millions of dollars of drugs were busted. You know, Myanmar is very known for producing ecstasy tablets. You know, it's very, very famous right now. And whenever they arrest that big amount of drugs, you don't have any owner, because there are a lot of allegation and accusation going on behind these drug traffics are very well-known figures. They're related to army or cronies, even some politician. And they're very solid information we got from the region is this drug business is doing directly on the border from Bangladesh and Myanmar. Myanmar cronies and politicians are in this ring, also in these drug rings. Also the Bangladeshi politicians and the influenced people from Bangladesh sides. So when the police chief released the press release on the 10th or 11th of October, he said very clearly it might be a drug traffickers who attacked the police post and just to retake the drugs. And the very next day, biased spokesperson of the Aung San Suu Kyi's office, the president office, Zote, he is known for his notorious comments on the Rohingyas issue and the Muslims issue last 5 years. And Aung San Suu Kyi reappointed him in that post. And he came up with pretty much same allegation. It might be a drugs traffickers, but he added something without having any solid information. It could be also the RSO, Rohingya Solidarity Organization, which doesn't exist anymore. It is a ghost organization, doesn't exist. Just the name exists, you know. And also the Bengali insurgents, because he tried to connect the attack to the Rohingya people. So the things happening in Rakhine State is unknown. Why it's happening? Who are these attackers? We like to know. Almost all of the attackers are not from, as far as our knowledge, as far as the information we get, that they have nothing to do with the Rohingya living in the Myanmar side. They might be there may be Rohingyas belong to other countries, maybe in the Bangladeshi border or some other places. We don't know. We cannot confirm that. The one thing for sure, they don't belong to Myanmar. They are not from Myanmar right now. So government particularly the military is justifying this attack on the police post, and they are conducting operations against the innocent Rohingya people. As you may all aware of that, there are extrajudicial killing going on every day. And so far, the report we got, more than 500 people have been killed, and more than 150, around 200 women being raped. The rape is going on every day. Like Ms. Kunja said a while ago, they're justifying wherever they go, they rape the women. And this is a kind of tactic they are using. And thousands of people are missing. We don't know where what their fate are. And about so far, 50 to 80,000 people, they fled to Bangladesh. So the situation in Rakhine State is very dire. We don't know what to do. We have no access to go over there. And international AIDS groups are not allowing to go over there. Even the UN have no access. The excuse is the security. We cannot provide your security reason over there. These guys are, they're accusing on Rohingyas. These guys are terrorists, these guys are this, these guys are that. And so they just want to justify the killing and arbitrary arrest and raping over there, without having any access by the international community. I would like to conclude my words. The things going on in Rakhine State is purely documented by the international experts. It's ethnic cleansing. Even the UN HCR officer said very bluntly last week. It's ethnic cleansing is going on. It's crimes against humanity, even genocide. But it's very sad. International community, particularly the superpower country, they are reluctant to accept these words because they don't want to lose their partnership with the Myanmar government. They don't want to lose their businesses in the country. So I would like to request on the behalf of international community to you guys, please spread these messages to your own government and to your own community. The things happening in Myanmar is very dire, and we are really worried about that. It's pretty much kind of civil war going on. And also the situation in the ethnic areas is not good, the fighting over there. And please pray for our country. We appreciate your time. Thank you so very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Kim Aung-myint. Sally, you've been working on IDPs on this side of the border for more than 20 years. You've been at the club many times before. In some ways, I think the IDPs, who I think most of them are Karen, on this side of the border, are almost the forgotten people because they've been there so long. Perhaps you could give us an overview.
Thank you, Jonathan, and also thanks to Kayla for giving a camera to enable children to tell the story to us. I think one of the things that I noticed really from both the pictures of the photographs from Ethuta IDP camp, but also from the documentary, was even when you have IDPs who don't have their family with them, it's they're working together as communities. And I think in all these situations for internally displaced, it's the communities who are really the key responders. It's the communities who are the first response, who are the main ways of support. And we as the international community have to find how we can work better to make sure we get resources down to the local communities to support those who really need it. Ethuta camp is in Myanmar, and it was actually set up in 2006 at a time when the Thai military was blocking new arrivals coming into Thailand, when at that time we had about 150,000 in the refugee camps in Thailand receiving official assistance through international aid organizations. Ethuta camp and also some very small Shan IDP camps, their communities were not allowed to cross at that time, and so they ended up with these very small camps, and they've been supported through informal networks ever since that time. Since 2012, here in Thailand, since the bilateral ceasefire agreements, by and large, we've been working with the refugees in the 9 camps to be preparing them for return at some time in the future. And we've seen various milestones pass. People have talked about it'll be when the bilateral ceasefires are signed. Then it was all, people were looking towards the nationwide ceasefire agreement, of which some of the ethnic groups have signed. Then it was the outcome of the elections last year with the NLD coming to power. And yet, still, the movement back into Myanmar is not really happening. last month in October, there was a very small, very publicized, facilitated return of about 70 refugees who have gone back to Myanmar, but no one is exactly expecting an exodus to be leaving the camps and heading back. And when you ask people, well, why not? What is it? Why are people not going back when we've seen these changes in the southeast? And essentially, people want to see things changing on the ground in rural southeast Myanmar. It's not enough to see an agreement reached at a high level. They want to see what it actually means in practice on the ground to them. Mistrust for people who have fled from the military for decades, many of whom have been displaced multiple times, mistrust runs very deep, so they want to see real change. And in fact, what are they seeing? They're seeing increased militarization into these areas. And for the southeast, while predominantly it hasn't been ongoing conflict, what it has been is more around conflict for control of areas for natural resource extraction, control of areas for commercial development. And perhaps this is what the future in some of these ceasefire areas is going to look like. Not out and out conflict, but indeed there will be conflict over natural resources. So what's going to make it happen? What are going to be the pull factors? At the moment, refugees are not a priority. Internally displaced people in the southeast, they're not a priority for the government. They're not a priority for the ethnic armed groups, because there are so many other very large issues to be dealt with, whether it's over land tenure, security of land tenure, whether it's around just the whole of the peace process. We're at the very, very initial stages of the political dialogue, and it could take years. It's going to take a long time, and yet somehow, as the international community, as we see a milestone reached and the elections pass, we expect things to suddenly happen, and it doesn't, and it's likely to take a long time. So I think some of the things that are really important in the meantime, what actually is going to give people mobility? And it's also the root cause of some of the displacement, but it's also going to be what actually enables people to reintegrate long term. And it's about documentation, it's about ID, it's about citizenship, because that's what gives people their freedom of movement. And we talk about IDP camps, we talk about refugee camps. I think confinement to camp may be a short-term move for protection, but in the long term, nobody should be confined to a camp. Some of the refugees have been in camp now for 30 years. If they go outside, they're arrested. They don't have freedom of movement. They don't have the right to work. And these are things that people as basic individuals, everyone should have the right to freedom of movement. Whether you're a Rohingya in Rakhine State, whether you're an IDP, whether you're a refugee, having freedom of movement is really about people being able to take responsibility for themselves, to find a way to support themselves and their families. So I think we really have to put this as an issue for Myanmar very high on the agenda, about documentation, ID, citizenship, to enable a lot of these displaced communities to be able to take more responsibility in their daily lives. And secondly, I think the other issue that really, when you compare, if you like, Ithutar camp as an IDP camp, it's invisible. A lot of the IDPs, they're invisible because access is denied to these camps. And it's really, really crucial that certainly states, they have a obligation, they have responsibilities to ensure access, at least for humanitarian assistance, to civilians who are caught up within conflict. And so I think when we look at some of the themes, some of the commonalities, the access for humanitarian operations that is currently being denied in the country, the access that has been denied to some IDPs. For 20 years we were supporting local partners informally, so because they could get access to these communities to ensure that vital humanitarian assistance was getting through. So I think these are just some of the issues as we go forward we have to think about. And for the refugees here, our main hope really is that it'll be the pull factors. We want it to be the pull factors that move people across the border back to Myanmar. We don't want to see it's because of funding becoming difficult, or is difficult to get, but services starting to be reduced, and that in the end refugees they feel pushed out of the camps because of a lack of support from this side. Whereas what we really want to see is that people are going back because IDPs, refugees, their future, their lives, their livelihoods, their citizenship, their rights to employment are looked at and addressed such that people want to return to their country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, we've got a raft of experience and talent here and a knowledge of the extraordinary situation of displaced people. So anyone who wants to ask any questions, there is a microphone, I think, if I can see it there. Yeah, there it is, standing up there. Now's your chance while you've got people here. And if no one's... Johnny, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you very much, everyone on the panel. That was really fascinating. And Kayla, for your film as well. I'd like to ask a question specifically. So my name's Jonathan from Channel 4 News. I'd like to ask a question specifically to Mr. Kim Nong-mint about the Rohingya situation right now. I'm aware, of course, from what all of you have said about the extremely disastrous situation facing many of these IDPs in all corners of Myanmar, Burma. But with the Rohingya, what would it take to get access for journalists, for humanitarians? What pressure is required to enable the UN to get there, to enable journalists to actually see what is going on right now up in northern Rakhine?
Thanks for the question. The UN is currently pretty much helpless right now, even though UN tried to go to get some information and real situation they would like to know, but it's not allowed by the Myanmar government. And I think, first of all, the United Nations and as well as the international community must address to Aung San Suu Kyi directly, and the international community must address Aung San Suu Kyi, stop whitewashing the crimes committed by the thugs, you know. Since I belong to a registered political party, I cannot talk very openly against the military, but I prefer to use them thugs. So international community must, particularly UN, come with the binding resolution in the Security Council and to find a proper way, like independent investigation team or something like that. And international community, some particularly who are really aware of this situation, they are trying their best in UN to have the R2P, you know, which is the responsible to protection. So I think we have to come with the binding resolution in the Security Council, because enough is enough. And we have been heard a lot of things from the UN and international community. Oh, we are sorry about that. Should be, this is enough, this and that. I think its time is up. It's purely happening over there is genocide. Nobody can deny this. It just didn't happen in 2012. It's a systematic persecution of 40 years of persecution in Rakhine states going on, you know. And they are committing all kind of crimes in Rakhine state. In Myanmar, is very common. What we're talking about is they call 4 cuts. 4 cuts mean they're cutting your movement, they cut you from your livelihood, your education, your health, and from every aspect. It's not more than 4 cuts. So you are not able to do anything. You know, you are very much confined in concentration camps. So the situation going on in Rakhine state is very bad. It's a dire situation. I think before it is too late, we have to find a proper solution. As I said, you know, the UN has to come with the binding solution. I mean, enough is enough. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. Jim.
Hi, Jim Pollard from The Nation newspaper. I've got questions for a couple of different people on the panel, if I may. Just to Sally, I'd just be interested in finding out, you've got reduced numbers now compared to what you used to have. I think it was over 150,000 at one point. I'm just wondering, your predecessor, Jack, he used to have to raise about $35 million a year to feed everyone and pay all the other costs that you were responsible for. Is that, do you still have a tally of that? Do you still try and go around and get that amount each year, or is it fractionally down a bit? To the other two on the left, Kunjar and David, I'm just wondering if you can give me an assessment in terms of Kachin state. There's a notice that has gone out today from the Free Burma Rangers saying that the Tatmadaw appears to be looking to split the KIA into two. I'm just wondering if you think that is possible, if we're going to see some kind of a major change in that aspect of the fighting up there. I realise that you've now got this situation of the Northern Alliance that has sprung up, but I presume that the only reason that that has happened is because militarily things are going quite badly. And then just the final question, if I may, to Kim Ong Min. I'm just interested in whether I know you've said that you think that the attack of October 9 could have been related to drugs. Is there also the possibility that the military are simply concerned that the dramatic change that has come over, that this election win has gone against them, and that they're thinking that they have to retake control? We've seen a warning in recent days by the military commander. Essentially looks as though he's warning that he has the capacity to take power back. Do you think they're setting up a scenario whereby they actually want to do that? Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with you, Sally. Your first question, yeah.
Thanks. Funding. I think funding is always a challenge in any situation. Yes, we have reduced numbers. Yes, if you like, our budgets are reducing, but they're still significant in terms of it. They're in the millions. The challenge for the NGOs here is that the mechanisms are not really set up well for protracted crises. And here in a humanitarian situation in the refugee camps, we are competing, if you like, for funds with emerging crises, and in particular Syria and the European refugee crisis. And when you compare the two, refugees here, which has been ongoing for 30 years, and what's emerging in Europe, if you like, on key donors' doorsteps, is proving to be very challenging. So yes, we are still having to do the rounds. We are all, it's very difficult, it's almost impossible to raise new funds, new donors for refugees. The interests have shifted. So yes, we are out there. If there are major donors, I don't see them from the major countries. Yes, we are still very much looking to fill very significant shortfalls for this year and next year.
Thank you. David and Kunjar, the situation at Kachin. Is the military trying to split the KIA?
To be honest, I'm not qualified. I don't know enough to remark on that. I'm not a military strategist, so I wouldn't want to pass comment. What we can say is that in the northern half of KIA controlled areas, in a place called Gidon, fighting has been intensifying in recent months. And we've seen mortar fire, artillery, airstrikes happening up there. Many believe that the purpose of that intensification of the conflict up there is to cut off a number of IDP camps up there. It would make it near impossible for organizations to access IDPs in those camps, which perhaps explains some of the intensification of conflict up there. In terms of alliances, I think all it's fair to say is that the war that the KIA are fighting, it's a very unequal footing that the conflict is being fought on. From the Tatmadaw, we see airstrikes and weapons procured from many different places, and the KIA simply don't have access to the same military technology. The reason for saying that is that if there are alliances springing up, I think it reflects in part common interest for groups which are fighting the Tatmadaw to see a genuine federal Burma. And the last thing I'd say on that is that I do think that the aims of many of those groups is to end the conflict in the country.
Thank you.
Honestly, I also really do not know how to respond it. However, I trust the KIO and the Kachin civil society, because the KIO has been a lot of consultation has done with the Kachin civil society, and the last time the meeting with the civil society and the KIO was in October, and the next meeting will due in the mid of December. So, and all of these meetings are heading to national dialogue and Union Peace Conference. For this moment, the Kachin civil society and the KIO, no matter how hard the fighting is, but we are still discussing about how to participate and find solution in a political way. And I also trust the KIO. They can organize not only Kachin civil society, civilians, but also the KIO and the KIA among within themselves. Because the concept without if the KIO split up, from my understanding, the Kachin civil society will not allow them to split out. Because for this moment, the people are stronger than the army. This is what I'm seeing in terms of politics. Without support of the people, the KIO cannot stand. So I trust there will be no split. Thank you very much.
Kim Mon-mint, do you see the attacks in Rakhine State as possibly a move by the military to possibly exert its authority?
This is very important question. I really appreciate it. And whenever the things happen, the government always try to find an excuse, some kind of somebody to blame on. When the things happened in 2012, 8th of June, and when in Maungdaw we have things happen, and immediately that evening, Muzo, this currently spokesperson of Aung San Suu Kyi and the President Tenjo, he immediately came up with the Al-Qaeda. It attacks are inspired by Al-Qaeda, RSO, and all other organizations. They are well known in the world. The same thing. What happening right now is very much. I totally agree with you. That's the same thing we are thinking about. Last month, this time on the 30th of last month, I was in Bangkok for a conference, and UN residence coordinator and some ambassadors, they went to see firsthand the situation in Rakhine State. They visited Maungdaw. As soon as I heard the news, I was here, and I sent a message to the ambassadors who I know them, who I know very closely through their assistance. I told them, be careful, Myanmar government, and we'll have some fake Rohingyas. And because in Rakhine State, there are some Hindus, they look like us, they can also talk our language, speak our languages. And also there's a race called Mramaji, they exactly look like us, they are also sharing the same language with us. So they will bring that kind of people to lie the international community, the diplomats and UN, and nothing happened to the villages. These all arsons were done by the Rohingyas and Bengalis, So exactly things happen. So there was a ambassador who is from a Muslim country. I don't want to mention his name, which country he's from. And when I came back to Yangon a week after that visit, and he invited me to embassy, he said, "You are right. Your information was very correct." When I talked to some guys, and I have some doubt about the things they are talking about, looked like nothing happened. Everything was done by the Rohingyas, and the government didn't do anything. These attackers they are terrorists, this and that. So the ambassador said, I asked them some question related to Islam, so they couldn't answer it. So I didn't argue with them. The ambassador said, I just leave it like that. So whatever you're telling right now is definitely one of the things we can think about. The government want to justify the attack. Another thing is they want to derail, undermine the Kofi Annan's commission. This is very important because even in Kofi Annan commission, Rohingyas are not included. We are the one who's supposed to object the Kofi Annan Commission, but we didn't object the Kofi Annan Commission. We cautiously supported the Kofi Annan Commission because this is a very positive step taken by Aung San Suu Kyi. That's what we think, unless she has different intention. But Rakhine are the one who are opposing. Kofi Annan will be visiting the day after tomorrow to Rakhine State, and Rakhine released a statement today, I think. They are not going to meet with Kofi Annan. So they are the one who's making up this kind of obstacle, you know. So another thing, what we can relate at the attacks is to undermine the Kofi Annan Commission as well, you know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Yes, please.
My name is Mong Chonu. I belong to Burmese Rohingya Association in Thailand, also advocacy group around the world representing the Rohingyas. Thanks for your, arranging this grand occasion, and also you revealing our pain, especially Rohingyas, Kachin, and the Shan. They all are our brothers and sisters. So my question. Before my question, give me only 1 minute time. Just a recent development in my area, because the genocide or ethnic cleansing after 9 October is happening in my hometown, my home area, my own village. Nearby surrounding nearly 37 villages are partly or wholly damaged. And so just we got the information that we have the many prisoners they arrested, Rohingyas, after 9 October, and they keep in the headquarters, which one of the headquarters was attacked or seized by the Rohingyas, not outsiders. They are Rohingyas, youth Rohingyas, who are uncontrolled. They cannot control by us because they're born in a stateless. I'm telling who attacked the, sorry, what wrong? Hello? Who attacked the 9 October army camps or the border security, which you call BGP, border guard, BGF, border guard forces. Okay. The news is that just yesterday to now, they are the Burmese authority, border guard, police and army, they are taking many inmates, many prisoners from the prison.
Can you get to a question, please? You need to ask a
from
question.
Mongdo
to the panel.
and Butidong before the which you call the Kofi Annan visit the Mongdo. He probably going to visit Mongdo. I don't know he can or not. Many prisoners they are taken into the jungle or unknown places by the Burmese forces. Rohingyas prisoners. So we are very thinking about their the future life. Okay, this is my question now is to what his name Kim Mong Ming, because I left them a long time ago. I cannot remember them their names or their work, what job they are working. How you know that Rakhine, not whole Rakhine, because I respect the Rakhine, also Rohingya, also other community. How you know that 9 October attack was, the mastermind or the attackers were Bengali, and they are coming from outside, not Rohingya inside? How you know that?
Okay. Let's,
and another one is...
No, stop. Can you stop for a moment? Can we let them answer, please? Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you answer, please?
Okay. Thanks for the question. As I said a while ago, we have no direct access to the region. We are relying the news from the international community, UN over there, and also we have our good friends who are living in the area. So I'm going according with that news. As I said in my previous talking, very next day, police chief said these attacks are from people from the hill tract. So if you like to argue with that, you can argue with the police chief, Mr. Chonu. All I can share is that much information. I don't have much information to share with you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other? No, sorry, that's enough. Thank you. Do we have any other questions, please? Thank you.
Hello. Is it working? Oh,
yes,
there it is. Hello, my name is John Kane. I'm a new member. This is very, very interesting. I'm retired from the United States Department of State, but after a period of retirement, I was bored, so now I'm a student at Chula College of Population Studies, so this is very relevant to me. It's a coincidence that earlier today, before I got the email to remind me to come here, I read a chapter in one of my textbooks about how, a 2015 book, quite current, about how the UN has a big organization, 60,000 people or something, I don't know, to deal with migrant issues of displaced persons who have crossed borders. But there is no United Nations organization to deal with internal displaced persons. And it talked in that chapter about how they're trying to do that, trying to work in that area, even though they have no mandate to do it. And it said that they are trying to change that so they have more ability to work within borders, where the UN is normally international, to work within borders on IDP issues. So I'm curious, since the book was published, whether there is more progress that anyone can tell me about, that the UN is able to work with IDP people where previously they had no mandate to do so.
Okay, thanks. The opinion of the panelists, I mean, obviously the UNHCR deals with people who cross borders into other countries, but IDPs are these days often some of the biggest proportions of displaced people. Do we have an international mechanism specifically dealing with them?
I really don't know for this moment. At the beginning, then UNHCR was the one who really trained and worked with local organizations. For this moment in the Kachin state, we have 9 organizations coming together and form joint strategy team. And that joint strategy team is also working with UNHCR. And also in Myanmar, we have UN OCHA for UN coordination. However, that is also in 2 sides in Kachin. One is the government control area, and another part is the KIO, Kachin Independent Organizations control area, let's say rebel control area. So the 2 areas that the strategy is different. For this moment, up to this month, that in government control area, they still have some rights, while the other parts have no rights. And also even ICRC have to withdraw their operation in the KIO control area when it comes to when the order comes from the government, let's say especially from state councillor's office and also from president's office. This is what we know. So then for this moment, the order, which order we have to listen, and this is really is coming from Myanmar orders rather than international laws and norms. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I guess it didn't quite answer the question, except that I guess the obvious thing is that there are any number of UN agencies that do get involved when you have large numbers of internally displaced people, and their effectiveness depends to a large degree on access and cooperation of governments. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, all 5 of them, for a very wide-ranging discussion, and I hope you all enjoyed it very much. Thank you.